right, we're back for another edition of the Astro Weather. I'm your Astro Weatherman, decked out in red for Thor's Day. We should have our guy Thor at the door here any moment now, and the proceedings shall begin. Thor's real name, well, I guess that's his real name, but his Earth name, Dr. Don Blake. And he walked with a limp, and he had a special cane that he would hit on the ground, which would turn him into Thor, and he would have the hammer of Ragnarok. Right? There's your Marvel Comics trivia for the day. When I bought comics, I was a big comic book fan. I loved comics. Thor was not near the top of my list. I did like the Jack Kirby art, don't get me wrong. But, if you had the wheel, the rack, you were spinning around, there's generally a hierarchy of comics you would get if you're in the mood to get a comic, right? Almost always, my go-tos would be like the Avengers. If they had them in print, although by the time I was like avidly collecting the mutants, the X-Men, I like those group comics because you got a lot of superhero bang for your buck with those teams, right? X-Men, Avengers, the mutants. The mutants were around. Let's see who else. What else was I into? So if they were there, they're at the top of my hierarchy. Then I'd go down, maybe just below that. Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. On the DC side, I was into Jack Kirby's New God series. They were, if I could find them, I would always get them. Didn't matter which one it was. Or even like Commandy, Last Boy on Earth. Jack Kirby, I'd get that. I like Jack Kirby's art. And then maybe I drop down to Justice League, Green Lantern, The Flash. The Flash always had like funny, weird superheroes, right? Funny, weird superheroes or supervillains. Flash had funny, weird supervillains. And then drop down like Hawkman. It's all right. And then that's like one tier. Or the Atom. I like the Atom because he can shrink. So that was like one tier. And then there was the next tier. And Thor was kind of like in the next tier. And Daredevil was on the next tier. Look, I know Daredevil was blind. I get it. But the inking for Daredevil was always dark, right? And I think it was supposed to somehow represent the darkness of his world. Wasn't a huge fan of Daredevil, but if it was there, I'd grab one, right? I think Doctor Strange was up higher on the hierarchy. I like Doctor Strange. I liked all that magic shit. That was good. I'm trying to think. Superman and Batman were usually pretty low on my list. Was not a fan. Not a huge fan. Captain America was pretty high. Liked Iron Man. Iron Man was kind of first tier. If I could find Iron Man, first tier. And then you'd get down into those comics that if nothing else was there, you would buy them. Like Nick Fury or Strange Tales or Jonah Hex, Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider was okay. But there was definitely kind of a hierarchy with comics. And where you didn't want to be is that third tier. And you kind of walk away and go, okay, I guess I'll read this. Every now and then one would surprise you. Anyway, there's my little comic book rant. Not even a rant. But today's Thor's Day. And welcome to it. Everybody, did you get through the eclipse? Did you get through the eclipse? I found the energies to be pretty intense. I was tired. I was gassed. God. By the end of the day, I was dragging. And I don't know if it had anything to do with the eclipse or the compromised state of my heart, which is very much connected to Leo and the sun and the eclipse. But I was just dragging yesterday, and I actually went to bed for me fairly early and slept like a freaking log all the way through the night. The world could have ended last night, and I wouldn't have known about it. I would have slept through it, woke up, and it would have just been all rubble. That's how deep I slept last night. So, how was your experience with the eclipse? Did you guys have any epiphanies? Any phenomena happen? There was a video kind of being passed around where it looked like there was two suns. Have you seen that? That was my experience when we had the big eclipse here in October of 2023. I could have swore that I saw two suns. I also saw things inside the sun that were very unusual. Very, very, it wasn't like it was just like a black slate. I mean, there was energy going on in there. It was wild, absolutely wild. I still don't think we understand the totality of an eclipse. And I'm not even talking about the totality as like the state of the eclipse, like a total eclipse. I just don't think we understand it. I don't think we can fully grasp the physics and the cosmic proportion of what goes on during an eclipse. And I think if we get into the realm of like mystical experience, one of the definitions set forth by William James is that the mystical experience is ineffable, meaning it's you cannot articulate it. It is beyond the scope of comprehension and articulation. Like you can have a feeling and images and all the things that go along with it, but words cannot describe the actual experience. That's the ineffability. There's a whole criterion for mystical experiences, and that is one of them. And I think that it would be fair to transpose that onto an eclipse. That again, I don't think we have the language for the eclipse. One man's opinion. We do at a certain level, but if we knew what was going on, really what was going on with it, I don't think we'd be able to fully articulate it. One man's opinion, because there was something I went during that eclipse in October, right over Kerrville, Texas. Okay, it was right over us. We got the totality of that thing. And you know, it's interesting. We got both eclipses, and we got the one in the following year in April. And man, this place has been a fucking disaster zone since those eclipses. It's like, okay, is that the math? I mean, the following year we have a flood. We have not just any flood; it is the fucking flood of the century. And then just this last month, July, we have another flood. And yes, the Guadalupe River rose, but more than the Guadalupe, these creeks that feed into the Guadalupe, they all surged and flooded and wreaked a lot of havoc on local businesses. Like our main hardware store here, which is actually a tourist attraction called Gibson's. Everybody loves Gibson's. You get anything at Gibson's, right? You can get an AR-15. You can get a crossbow. You can get a barbecue. You can get cowboy boots. I mean, it's kind of like you can get a wide variety of candy. They've got a big candy aisle. They've got a shoe section. They've got clothes. They've got kitchenware, like country kitchenware, and cast iron pans. They had everything. People go to Gibson's just to experience a store that existed 40, 50 years ago in a town where that was it, right? There was no Walmart. There was no Ace Hardware. Maybe there might have been an Ace Hardware, maybe, because Gibson's actually is connected to Ace Hardware, but it's Ace and more. Yeah, paint, everything. The only thing you can't get there is lumber. That's about it. And Gibson's, I think the flood was on the 8th or 9th of July, and they're still closed. They got totally flooded out. And it was the creek system that just overflowed and just created havoc on Junction Highway, which is the big road that cuts through town. So this store, and it provides a real service for people. Like if you want to get plumbing parts and whatever, screws, nuts, they've got it. They've got it. And then they've been closed. They've been closed for about a month now. I don't know when they're going to open, but I'm telling you this because for 2 years straight now, well, yeah, I guess 2 years, we've had these floods. And it hasn't escaped me that this is the area that was ground zero for 2 eclipses. I still don't think we fully understand them. And I've been doing astrology for a long time, and I've stuck my head in eclipses, for the entirety of this journey, and I still am absolutely mystified by them, but also aware of the fact that they do create an energy where there is a tension. And on 2 weeks ago, we did the big show on the eclipse, and I went through basically every eclipse since 1950, where it was in Leo, but focusing mainly on the degree of the eclipse, very close to where we were yesterday, which was 20 degrees. And so anything basically from about 13 to about 25 degrees I was looking at. And again, there are patterns there, right? I mean, you can usually discern a pattern with things. And the patterns were intense earth changes, and in very intense water events like hurricanes, monsoons, typhoons. And, we established that. Like that was a given. The other thing that was pattern worthy was political shakeups. And either them actually happening in the moment or beginning to happen. And it was almost like the eclipses were kind of initiating these changes, these radical changes. But remember, we were focusing on the Leo eclipse. So the other side of the Leo eclipse is Aquarius, right? And Aquarius does have to do with revolutionary movements and not adhering to the status quo. And you can see that. You can see some of that, especially with Milosevic in the beginning of the first color revolution. And that was part of one of those solar eclipses. And so we look at what's happened over the literally the last week, and we're still in the eclipse phase, by the way. We had the massive earthquake in Colombia. It was just like right on time. It was like, wow. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen footage from it, but it was frightening. Absolutely frightening. Now, there are some people who believe that it was like an intervention, like a military intervention, because Colombia was denouncing Israel. And who knows, maybe Israel approached Colombia and said, hey, can you take 100,000 of our people? And Colombia said no. Maybe that was the punishment. But it still fit the pattern nonetheless. And we're still in it. We're still in that clip space. Anyway, my experience yesterday, just exhausted. Just totally drained and exhausted by the end of the day. And there's other things going on, but we'll keep that between my two ears. All right, let's see who's here. We're going to go longer today because I'm starting a new thing on Thursdays. So on Thursdays, this show will go longer, and it will not do 15 minutes of flame. It just feels like I started doing it and felt like last week, and it felt really organic. It allowed me to stretch out a little bit more. And so one of the things, I just want to say this before we get into the meat of the show. One of the things that I wanted to mention was if you haven't seen my show the last couple of days on 15 minutes, I got into the cost of things and the price for just living. And I started off, of course, with Klaus Schwab and his famous statement in 2020, which was, you'll own nothing and be happy. And in 2020, I don't think we really understood it, right? And there is some astrological significance to that because he at that time, they talked about something called the twin reset. And what he was referring to is that there would be two events that would be sponsored by the WEF that would be part of this idea that humanity was coming into a period where things were going to be reset socially, technologically, economically. Like they were announcing it. So the twin reset part was that there was a physical meeting of people in Davos, but because of COVID, they were also going to stream that meeting. So that was the twin part. And I always felt it was interesting that they had this in the month of June, which of course was Gemini. And you can't tell me these fucking people don't know astrology. Okay, they do, and they use it. They use astrology, and they use it because it can amplify their message or amplify their event or amplify their action. They use astrology, totally. So we started off on Tuesday talking about Schwab and that whole concept and theory, and then moving it forward to where we are now in 2026, 6 years later. And it's becoming clear why we won't own anything, because nobody will be able to afford to own anything. They'll make ownership onerous. That's what's going to happen. They will make ownership onerous. And people will start divesting themselves of things because number one, maybe they can't afford the insurance. Number two, maybe they can't afford the upkeep. Maybe three, they need to sell for money and resources. And then things start to dwindle away, right? And then it also keeps them from buying more things and limiting purchasing power. When you stop and look at everything right now and the extreme cost of things, it just makes sense. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll also limit production in certain areas. We'll cut back on things like diesel, all the things that are a byproduct of whatever the fuck is going on in Iran. Those will impact the global economy and make things more expensive and harder to get, right? And just do the math. It's what it is it's a system of limitation. And through more and more limitation and more and more limitation and more and more limitation, ultimately, what do you have left? You have nothing. And at the end of the day, theoretically, the beneficent governing bodies, this is all Aquarian stuff, by the way. This is all Aquarian stuff. and we're in Pluto and Aquarius. The true note is Aquarius, and with Aquarius, you'll get things that are obviously, this is kind of a negative. At least I think it's a negative. Some people may think it's a positive. I doubt that they're watching the show, but you'll get that. There are also, I would say, positive manifestations of Pluto and Aquarius and the true note Aquarius, which is the fact that it is a disruptive energy. And there are, like, the thing I love about humans, the thing I really love about humans is that we are innovative and we can solve problems. And the things that we create to solve problems can be fucking ingenious, really ingenious. And I saw this one guy. It was what did he do? He did something with these 1.5 gallon bottles of jugs of water. And I think he filled it up with water, and I think he put like a little bit of milk in there or something. And they have these little flashlights. They're small, right? They sit on top of, like, you're like a table, and they're battery operated. You press it. Anyway, he got one of these little flashlights, and he put this 1.5 milk jug or water jug with water and a little bit of milk in it. And he put it on top of this thing. It was a fucking lamp, right? It like lit up the whole room. And you didn't need candles. I mean, it's like all you needed was about 5 of these 1.5 gallons, some water, milk to sort of make it opaque, not a lot, and some of these little lights. You could have an entire room lit up with these things. You see, humans are really ingenious, and it goes back to like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I believe it was Enki, who is very fond of Utnapishtim, who's like a Noah character. There's a crossover between the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Old Testament with the flood story. And so Enki says to Utnapishtim, "You're really clever. You're really ingenious. I really like you. And because I like you, I'm going to tell you, we're going to flood the shit out of this place. So if I were you, I would build an ark, and here are the measurements. And then if you want animals to survive, 2 by 2. And that's what he does. Utnapishtim builds an ark. And the only reason he gets the information is because he's clever, he's ingenious, he shows the ability to be innovative and adaptable. And Enki liked that. If you've ever seen the movie, and it's a trashy movie, but I kind of like it. It's sort of a weird, bad movie favorite of mine. Battlefield Earth with John Travolta and Forrest Whitaker and Barry Pepper. It is the cinematic portrayal of the L. Ron Hubbard sci-fi novel, which in some ways has Enki and a little overlap. And there's a character in the movie who is like a Utnapishtim character, played by Barry Pepper, and he gets this intelligence upgrade from the John Travolta Cyclo. And so he shows this ability to be adaptable and innovative. And eventually he takes down the Cyclos, who have been terrorizing Earth for quite a while. And so I think that's really we have this wild, I think, how would I describe it? We have this wild gene inside of us. Maybe it's part of that junk DNA that people can't really explain. Like, what does it do? Why is it there? Maybe that's where the maverick, maybe that's where the rebel in us lives, and wanting to innovate and do something better. And this is the part of Aquarius that I'm buying stock on that. right? I am buying stock in the fact that people are, and this is, by the way, this is all dependent on whether or not they can maintain, they can maintain our spirit and not be demoralized. This is really important because once you're demoralized, I mean, you really can't do anything. You just may as well. I mean, really demoralized. Like some days you wake up and you're demoralized, but you rally. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just day after day after day after day demoralization. There can still be some hope for you, by the way. Don't, as Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel saying, don't give up. But it's not always the best conditions for being innovative because the big word in the brain is why. Like why am I here? Why keep going? This is such a shit show. Why do I want to be a part of this? And you know what? Those are valid questions. Those are very valid questions. And I think everybody should ask those questions. The challenge with that question is getting stuck there and just kind of being in the rinse repeat cycle. It's over and over and over again. But this is the part of Aquarius that I like. It's the innovative part. It's the maverick. It's the rebel. And so, yesterday I did on Tuesday, which is how we got here. I did a show basically showing how they were going to basically put us into a world where we own nothing and we'd be happy. And I went across the board: food prices, cars that suck, right? $75,000 for a car that's got a fucking touch screen that will go out probably within the first 10 to 15,000 miles of the car, and you have to replace it. Engines that are so convoluted and filled with computer modules that if you want to change one part, you have to pull out the entire engine at times just to get to one part, right? These cars were not made for they were not made for me and you. Let's put it that way. There was a time when cars were made for us and they were easy to work on, right? The whole auto parts industry that sprang up because people would repair their own cars. And engines, anything really past, I would say, and I'm being generous here, probably about 1999, it makes it very difficult to work on because of all the computer module stuff, right? And this is where we get into the whole right to work, and they've just made things impossible for people to work on. Like if you buy a John Deere tractor and you work on it yourself, you basically invalidate the warranty. So if something really goes wrong with the tractor, and you've done something to correct a problem, even if it was done right, and it may be something bigger than what you're capable of. Let's say the engine dies, and you take it back to John Deere, and you say, "Hey, I've got the tractor; it's under warranty," and they will know if you've worked on it. They have these sensors, right? And those sensors are always gathering data. And so if you've worked on it, they'll tell you, sorry, you worked on this, you broke the warranty. And if you want an engine, you're going to have to pay for it, right? So this whole right to work has been a big part of it. And it's insidious. It's really, really insidious because in a lot of ways, you don't own that John Deere tractor. And again, it's part of this, you'll own nothing to be happy. Well, who owns the tractor? Well, John Deere owns the tractor because they're the ones that can take care of it and maintain it, right? You don't own it. So I did that yesterday or 2 days ago. And then this is all in Rumble, by the way. And then yesterday I got into surveillance pricing, number one. And what was the other one that I got into? Weights and measures. And did a whole, almost 2-hour show on surveillance pricing and weights and measures. And the surveillance pricing, again, is kind of panoptical. It's all part of this panoptical world, which is very Aquarian, by the way, right? Like when we get into like the panopticon is this concept. They used to do it in prisons, and they would set prisons up. In fact, if you go to, it was like Strange Ways, which is one of the big prisons in England. It's circular. And what movie? It might be Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, or Sexy Beast. One of those prisons shows up I think it's Sexy Beast in that movie, and you can see like the reason why it's circular is because if you're a guard, they stick the guard tower in the center. You can see into every single cell, right? It's not like, you have a tier here and a tier here and a tier here. It's not like that. So the panopticon means that basically opti, vision, sight, pan everywhere. And this idea of the panopticon has been transferred into our world. And so everything from flock cameras to your cell phone, to surveillance cameras on gas stations or mini marts, the computer, everything is part of this panoptical world. And that they're always gathering data about who we are, what our spending habits are, where we are at certain times. All those things get sold to these data brokers. And then the data brokers are able to corral that data and use that data with something called surveillance pricing. And so we did a whole show on this yesterday. And then New Jersey came out and banned surveillance pricing, like the same day that we did the show. And I don't think they watched the show, but it's not the first state that has banned surveillance pricing. And other states theoretically should and could follow, right? And I think now that there's precedent, like if this is important to you, and it should be important to you, that you need to get on whoever it is at a state level, especially since we're headed into November and people are going to be reelected. This is an inflection point. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you can't vote your way out of it. You can't vote. This is true. But there are those people who, believe it or not, need your votes. They need your votes. And as we move towards November, they need all the votes they can get, right? So if you were smart and you organized and a group of you were on a phone tree, right, and just banging on your state, it's got to be state. So it'd be like the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state. You could probably do all three. And you were hitting them with a no surveillance pricing campaign. You might be effective. You might be more effective than you think because there's precedent. And New Jersey's not the only state, right? So people say, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? How can I change things? I'm telling you, this is a low-hanging fruit right now. It's a hot topic, right? The economy is shit. And by banning surveillance pricing, let's say it's the governor's going to look good, right? The governor's like, well, we banned this. And, we're looking after the consumer and we're doing something for the economy. I mean, they can't create any jobs. Maybe if they greenlight a AI center or data center. But I'm just telling you, if you want to feel like you have an impact, this is where you can have it. It is the soft white underbelly of the marketplace. And there is precedent. There's about 5 states now that have banned surveillance pricing. And they should. Now, will the data brokers stop scraping your data? No, they won't. But it will stop them from sending it to their clients, i.e. Kroger or Walmart, whoever it is, right? So that they can't use your data to affix a price. Very Aquarian. It's a very Aquarian kind of thing to do. All right, let's get into chat a little bit here. Remember, we're going to be here a little bit today. So relax, kick back. I'm going to say hi to the chat. And if you're new here, welcome to the show. And then we'll get into some astrology. Here we go. Let's see what we got here. We got Mr. DJ MC. Really digging the title screen, Robert. Yeah, every now and then I like playing with the anime filters. I think they're really cute, right? And in a world that is so utterly dystopic and schizoid, those anime filters are like a palate cleanser. So yeah, every now and then I like dipping it, and I just thought that little pastoral scene with the lion as the sun was very benevolent on the back end of the eclipse. Thanks, Benito. I watched the eclipse on time and date. It was lovely. Cool. Misbehaving too. That was KZ Gypsy Muse, by the way. Darling, I'm loving the thumbnail. Seems to be universally appreciated. Rise and shine. There's our guy. KK with a wrench. There's Amy. There's another. We have Thor with a wrench. He does have a hammer, though. There she is, the Bisou. Jackie Delario's here. Scrubby's, hi, Tamara. Good to see you. Teresa's here. Our lovely gal from SoCal. The astrological gardener. Oli Kobe's here, hanging laundry. Going to be mowing. I mowed the lawn last week. It was, I always like mowing the lawn. I have to say, I really like my front yard. I have these trees in my front yard. They're spectacular. Let's see. At 8 a.m., I'm officially 60. All right. Congratulations. It only gets worse from here. No, I'm just kidding. Take care of yourself, though, man. I say man, just as man, just in general. But take care of yourself. Got to take care of yourself. It's really important. The 60s are a war of attrition, and taking care of yourself is first and foremost. If you want to have a decent 70s, you got to really put the effort in the 60s. Probably should have done it in the 50s. Even better in the 40s. But you got some time. All right. Barbara Boots is with us. Hi, Barbara. There he is, Mr. Neil Smith, Salty Mama Soul Tribe. Hanging laundry, sweet thumbnail. Yes, a little Leo joyous innocence for us today. Not morning here, cast those spells. There you go. Let's see, Rosie Posey. What's up, Rosie? Good to see you. Desiree Conrad. Last few weeks has really done a number on me. Any advice? Greatly appreciate it. Pisces Sun, Taurus Moon. Libra rising. Well, with that trio, for me, I'd go out and have a really good dinner. Have a good dinner at a nice place. Can you afford it? Maybe not. But it might really impact your mood. And by the way, make sure you go with somebody who you like. That's really important. And sometimes that's all it takes. Especially with what you got, Taurus Moon, Libra rising. You appreciate aesthetics. Taurus Moon likes good food. Pisces, get a nice bottle of wine. Enjoy some good conversation. Leave your troubles behind for a couple hours. Laugh, talk, get a good night's sleep. Get up the next day and face it. There you go. My advice. Not knowing anything else. Vaporwave loves the thumbnail. We got Leo youth protest in India. The new growing cockroach protester story. So I've been tracking Gen A. As you know, I track the generations. And Gen A is fucking feral. They are feral. And I've had this confirmation from a number of people independently. There was a video of a school teacher. And this is an interesting. You see, Gen A have really weird inputs. First of all, most of them grew up with tablets. How many times have you sat down at a restaurant over the last 10 years and there's a family and they have maybe one or two kids and they're both on tablets? I've seen it a lot. So this is a generation that got uh, basically sucked into the black mirror at a very early age. Then they went into COVID and they had very significant social development disrupted. And whatever you think of schools, whatever you think of schools, um, meat grinders, uh, worker bee factories for the Rockefellers, whatever. Schools provide a modicum of structure and order, meaning you have to be at a certain place at a certain time. There are assignments that are due, right? I mean, this is one of the things that school provides. It provides some structure that you're supposed to be able to use and adapt in your life. Not everybody does well with it. Some people leave it early. But I do believe the structure part is important. What happened with Gen A is that their relationship with school at a fundamental age where they're starting to learn about the structure of life, the structure and the order of, you know, interacting with Saturn, right? Because that's a very Saturnian proposition that we're talking about, gets disrupted. And I don't think I don't think there's an existing model for this, right? We have a bunch of kids, they go to school and then they stop going. And for some kids, it was almost up to 2 years of not going. And even when they returned, it was like they were kind of mute witnesses to their own experience because they're all wearing fucking masks, right? And so you have this generation that has this pertinent piece of development that's just missing. And that missing part, I think, is really important. And as a result of this, Gen A is developing along a very feral line. And I saw this interview with a teacher, and he had one of these Gen A kids in his class, probably around 13 years old. And he watched this kid. I think he like pulled a fire alarm or something, and he literally watched him. And after it was all said and done, he pulled the kid aside. And he said, "Look, I saw you do it." And the kid vehemently denied it. Vehemently denied it, even though the teacher saw him. I mean, that kind of denial is sociopathic. Again, I posted there's a video I posted on Twitter. These Gen A kids are in some kind of I don't know, bubble tea cafe or some shit like that. And they are going fucking nuts. I mean, it is like a riot in there, and their chairs are flying around. And I'm like, what the hell? This is crazy. And so I posted it, and I had a person reply to it who's a teacher. And she said, I can completely confirm that they're feral. I will have conversations with these kids, and I will talk to them, and they will look at me like they're looking right through me, and they don't hear a word. And they don't hear a word. Now, that's not to say all of them are like that. This is a broad sample size, right? It's a very broad sample size. But a lot of them are. And they grew up under really weird conditions. A lot of them, not a lot of them, but a fair amount of them were targeted by their parents for sex changes. Yeah. Yeah. These are the kids that got taken to drag queen story hour and shit like that. This young generation, has had some very, I call them inputs, cultural inputs, very strange cultural inputs. And then there's a whole generation there, basically coming on the scene around 2011, which makes them 15 years old now, and up until like 2018, right? And 7-year Uranian cycle. They got Uranus and Aries. And that was part of the Uranus-Pluto square. I mean, that's what these kids have. They are fucking powder keg, I'm telling you. Right? I mean, you think Gen Z is radical? You think Gen Z is based? Gen A is going to be nihilistic. I mean, and some of them will be well advanced beyond their years because of that Pluto in Capricorn. But man, they're intense. They're very intense, and this is their summer, and they've been congregating in flash mobs and just absolutely wreaking havoc. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the child gangs in Brazil. They still have them, but in the favelas they'd have these child gangs, and they were fucking kids, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're running around with guns and they're doing stick ups and they're killing people. They're selling drugs. I mean, this is true, right? This was a big issue in Brazil, and those child gangs would stay together, grow up, and they would basically fucking run these favelas. City of God. What does weather remove? Let's remove that. Move from studio. I don't know what that means. Let's see. Oh, Jenna Fun. Booked the reading, texted email. All right, Jenna, I will look for you and get back to you today. Let's give Jenna a rousing solar return. There's Moira. Hey, Moira. Lena Winkler's here. Nicole DePaulo. Diane is here. My late husband would have been 79 today. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But you know what? I know it sounds corny. He's with you. He's with you in spirit. He's watching over you. He's got your back. And I bet you can feel it. Ubiquity. My father used to literally appear like Jesus in my mother's bedroom. She would tell me this. Not like Jesus looking like Jesus, but, resurrected, like in a body. Like one night she claims my father climbed into bed and slept next to her. Like she could actually feel him and feel his body. Pretty wild, huh? Stay Thorsey, my friends. I love that. That's great. I think I woke up on Venus. It's so misty in the bean fields today. That's a good line. I think I woke up on Venus. It's so misty in the bean fields today. I like that. Love for Guy. What's up? Digging the thumbnail. Nicole, love Norse mythology. Comics, not so much. Mr. Gray Moore is here. Hey, what's up? Gary, 88. What's up, Gary? Did I say hi to Christy? Hi, Christy. If I didn't, I'll say it again. Kim Harvey. What's up, Kim Harvey? The Archies for me. The Archies were not for me. Golden Key Comics was like the bottom of the barrel. About the only thing worth buying in Golden Key Comics was Plastic Man and Dr. Solar. And the thing about Golden Key Comics was like, I think they had Doc Savage too, their comics were such a prick tease because they had great covers. Like they put all the fucking illustration money into the covers. And then when you got into the comics themselves, you're looking at the illustration, man, this is not Jim Steranko. I had a bunch of Dark Shadows comics. Those would be worth something right now. There's Janine. What's up, Janine? Katie Cat. 999. What's happening? Peace back. Vaporwave, my mind was racing last night. It was hard to sleep. My mind was not racing. My mind ran out of gas last night. One Bill Smith is here. Georgia Ruth from Texas. I've been finding lately finishing people's sentences in my mind. Yeah, isn't that a trip when that happens? That's a trip. That's really a trip. That's easy to believe since we lie to you about everything. That's a sentence that packs a punch. There's some weirdness to the sun and the moon. Have you guys looked at the moon lately? It looks odd, and sometimes it has an auric effect around it. The moon is odd. I don't think the moon is natural at all. You know, my theory of the moon is that they move the moon here. Whoever they are, they move. And I know some people, well, the moon is just a reflection of the Earth. I don't really completely buy that. Anyway, the 2023 event was epic. Most everyone here attended, felt the incredible presence. It was amazing. It was totally amazing. Janine was here. Yeah. New Spider-Man movie was great. Miss the old NYC heroes. I got into the Spider-Man trilogies. Tobey Maguire is my least favorite Spider-Man. He was too mopey. Mopey Maguire. I guess he was some kind of emo guy. And what he should have kicked Kristen Dunst to the curb. Grow some balls, Peter Parker. And then I went to the Tom Hiddleston one. Is that the guy who married Zendaya, which is weird because they're in the movie together? We're going to talk about that today, by the way. Then I went to those three. Those three are really good. I love those three. I love those three because there's no real overt political message. Like you're not getting hit over the head with like DEI shit. And then I discovered the Andrew Friedman Spider-Man series, and I liked him. He was a wise ass. He was like a total Jewish wise ass as Spider-Man. I got it. Desiree, I haven't feel like being able to calm down in weeks. My phone messed up, erased everything I saved for 10 years. Must be for well, you know, you got a Taurus moon. You like things in a certain way, right? You need that order. You need that order. I still am an advocate of a really good dinner, Desiree. Shadow is the absence of light. Unless, of course, it's the Joni Mitchell live album, Shadows and Light. Great album, by the way. And you can get the DVD as well. I had Sun squared natal moon and Moon squared natal moon yesterday. It's a vice grippy. That's a vice grippy aspect. That'll squeeze all of the etheric toxins right out of you. Let's see. Lady Lou's here. What's up, Lady Lou? She's living up there in McKinney, and I'm just waiting for the 6 shooters to come out in McKinney here in the next couple of weeks. Let's see. All Prozac. What's up? I guess is that Charles? I don't know. The eclipse occurred in my 3rd house, as it would be. I had to surrender my car to one of my daughters whose need. Make sure that car is insured as much as it can be. Take it from me. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Olivia Provorse. Hi, Olivia. Beth Berry's here. Readings, Beth. Finka. I'm convinced these Earth events are not natural. An Israeli empire targeting all sovereignties who reject their control. I don't really have a problem with that. And I think that when they intervene, on a technological level. They're doing so on certain events, astrologically, because there's an amplification involved. Plain and simple. Right? But if you go back to, what was it, 2017? 2017, we in August, we had a full solar eclipse. And a day later, we had Hurricane Harvey in Houston. And I know that the weather is also modified, right? Were the Israelis behind that? I don't know. I'm not completely sure about that. But I do believe that they have their hands in just about everything. We know that they set fires in Patagonia. And now Malay has said, well, we'll take in 400,000 Israelis. And yes, because this area has been burned, we have a special section and clause in the Argentine constitution that allows people to move in and rebuild there. Oh, how convenient. How convenient. Love for Guy was exhausted yesterday. So was I. Karen Levitt is done. She's departing the White House. There's an interesting video clip of her on one of the Air Force planes, or one of the presidential planes, and Trump is in the seat facing her. And it looks like a fairly intense conversation. I don't know what he did to what she did to piss him off. But yeah, I do think that I do think Israel will take advantage. I think anybody who has any knowledge of astrology, and especially during periods where energies can be really amplified, they'll get on that, right? They will get on it, and they'll it's like hitting the booster button. It's like the nitrous oxide in your engine. Hell is expanding. How do we divest the controllers? They'll divest themselves. You see, this is the beauty of what's going to happen. There are times where we won't have to do anything, right? And I believe we'll see certain situations where either people will die or will disappear, or let's say Fauci, right? Now, some people will say, well, he needs to hang, he needs to be in jail, he needs to be behind bars. I don't have a problem with any of those ill feelings towards Tony Fauci. And again, you can say, well, that wasn't really Fauci. I don't, whatever. That was clearly his wife flipping everybody off. And him in the passenger seat looking scowling mad. He got tried in the court of public opinion. And everything that he did, theoretically, which was for the good of the country and the good of the world, has been completely wiped out. Completely wiped out. It's too bad that he didn't die. Like, if he had died in, let's say, 2022, he'd be a fucking legend. Everybody would, oh my God, this is the man. Because first of all, he wouldn't be able to go in front of Congress. And second of all, generally speaking, people are respectful of the dead, right? Unless your name is Margaret Thatcher. They dragged her through the mud. But even Lindsey Graham, a fucking, weird little, homosexual queen, right? Known for doing meth and hanging out with, male prostitutes. I mean, come on. That guy was not a tower of morality and virtue, and he was a war hawk. And he loved Israel, and he was all about just expanding the war. With all that information, surprisingly, he was treated with kid gloves. when he passed away, and people talked about what a great servant he was, and all this and all that. And then they bring his sister in, almost ensuring the fact that you can't talk bad about him because now his sister is there. And you have to be respectful of his sister because she's a very public person now. You see, this is what happens in death. So if Tony Fauci had died, he would have been lionized. He'd have statues everywhere. His problem is he lived too long. The curse of a Capricorn. And now, clearly, his reputation has been more than tarnished. And it's not like he's going out on the town and, having dinner at his favorite restaurant once a week. Apparently, he's like stuck in his fucking basement. But anytime, well, first of all, if a lot of times people have like an emeritus position and they get speaking engagements and they get in, they're brought in to address colleges when people graduate. None of that's available for him now. He's done. He's toast. He won't get any of it. Maybe some of his NIH cronies, might call him up every now and then for some advice, but he's done. He's effectively done. If he's ever seen in public, he'll be jeered. He's got Secret Service protection for the rest of his life. They basically park outside of his house. This is the world that he lives in. He lives in a fucking prison. He lives in a prison. And this is what I'm talking about. You're going to see stuff like this happen, right? And Tony Fauci is a controller. He's basically an arm of the controllers, but he's a controller nonetheless. And you'll see it. You'll see people running for office, and then all of a sudden they'll drop out. And you'll scratch your head. You go, well, why did that happen? Well, there's a reason why. Because something is about to blow up in their personal life. And they did not want it to come to light. And people will scratch their heads and go, wow, isn't that interesting? So I don't think we have to do anything. And really, if we look at the eclipse, I would say that this eclipse is the initiation of that process. And it has to do with the fact, and we talked about this, that Leo represents power. It represents kings, royalty, the divine right to rule, bloodlines. And I did a show on this back in, I think, 2018 or 2019. And it was called the Leo Code. It's on one of my channels. And I went through every single president since, I don't know, since Kennedy. And almost all of them had really prominent Leo aspects in their chart. Either Leo Sun, Leo Rising, they may have their true node in Leo. They may have Saturn in Leo. It was like there's a thread there. And there's a thread for a reason. I mean, if we look at the last four presidents, starting with Bill Clinton is a Leo. Barack Obama is a Leo. George Bush, Leo rising. Donald Trump, Leo rising. Mars and Leo in the first house. Like, there are four examples of what I'm talking about. And do I think that they have some kind of court astrologer that looks at Leo as a qualification for president? Maybe, because back in the day, it certainly would. If you were a court astrologer and all of a sudden, the first heir, had either the true node in Leo or the sun in Leo, right? It was like, okay, you got an heir here. And if it wasn't there, it was a lot sketchier, right? So we can just, and even things like, when we look at Pluto and Leo, right, the quote unquote boomer generation, right? In Pluto and Leo, we became very, like it was already there, but this idea of stars in Hollywood became really prominent, and these figures, these actors, were very Leo-like. They were treated like royalty. They had power. They had cachet. In some cases, they might have had presence, right? But the whole star system really became activated with Pluto and Leo, whether they were actually born with Pluto and Leo or they were launching their careers during Pluto and Leo. And some of them did, a lot of them did, right? If you look at sports, right, you have a lot of people, Pluto and Leo, who became very prominent in sports and they took on like a star-like status, right? Like, so there's royalty, there's royalty in sports, there's royalty in Hollywood, music, there's royalty in music, and even somebody like Bill Gates. Bill Gates has Pluto and Leo, right? And Bill Gates runs around the fucking planet like he's king. Bill Gates has Pluto and Jupiter conjunct Leo in his second house. No wonder he's got so much fucking money, right? And so this eclipse in Leo, for me, is more than a statement. It is kind of an energetic marker that the time of oligarchs and kings and queens and the star system itself is going away. Like the influence is being blotted out. And make no mistake, right? On the other side, we've got the True in Aquarius, which was part of the eclipse, by the way. And then we have Pluto in Aquarius, which is on the other side at a 3, and the True node was at like 29. So the Aquarian part is, it's kind of the people, right? It's not. It's the masses. It is the masses who have recognized the sort of the solar popularity of the star system, whether it was politics, whether it was business, whether it was movies, whether it was music, sports, right? Those things don't exist without people either buying a ticket to their movie, a ticket to their concert, a ticket to, I don't know, a sporting event, right? Like, so for me, somebody who really reflects this whole death of the star system or this eclipsed sun is David Lee Roth. And David Lee Roth, astrologically, is a Libra. It's very interesting that both lead singers were, or we're not counting Gary Sharon, but David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, both Libras. I found it pretty interesting. But if you look at David Lee Roth, right, he exudes Leo, with the lion mane and, all of that, right? His bodacious behavior, showman. So if we're just looking at Pluto and Leo and this whole idea of the star system, David Lee Roth goes right to the top. Well, have you seen David Lee Roth lately? David Lee Roth he's a joke, right? He's a joke. And when he posts a video of him performing, if you can call it that, he has no voice left. He's got backing tracks. He's got about 5 vocalists that back him up. And the comments are, love you, Dave. Diamond Dave rules, to, oh my God, I have, how can I unsee this? Right. And I feel like that's kind of a symbol. Look, this is a symbol of something that's dying. And this whole idea of people, rulership, the ultimate authority, like that's dying. It's going away. And this eclipse is a marker for that. And if that's true, and I do believe it's true, then what happens as a result of that is the exposure that goes along with it. And these people will be exposed. They will be exposed. They will fight tooth and nail to not be exposed, but they will be exposed. And they don't have to be boomers. Like, for instance, Jared Kushner. Here, I got a good one for you. This is a really good one for you. And this is current. This is hot off the press. And it has to do with many of the things I just talked about. So people made a really big deal out of the Los Angeles Dodgers going to see the president at the White House because they won the World Series, and teams don't go there because, Trump's, a racist, fascist, sexist, whatever. But the Dodgers go there. And the Dodgers are owned by this guy, Mark, I forget his last name. I wish I spelled his last name. And he's part of a big time ownership group. So the Dodgers are like super diverse. They've got Magic Johnson, who is a Leo, and Billie Jean King. So they got a really diverse ownership group. And so he's part of that ownership group, and he's connected to like Guggenheim and stuff like that. So in October of last year, he buys the LA Lakers from the Buss family, pays a huge amount of money for the LA Lakers. But along the way, he becomes the object of an investigation for the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC. Like, they've got him under a microscope, right? So the sequence of events is fascinating. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, he shows up at the White House with the Dodgers, gives Trump a World Series ring. Everybody cheers, everybody claps. Oh, look, this is so American. But what he was really doing is he was working out a deal. And the deal is that he's going to sell the Los Angeles Lakers to Jared Kushner's brother, Josh, along with Bob Iger, who was the head of Time magazine. And I guess he spent some time in cable TV and Warner. And, he's like an old school Hollywood wheeler dealer. But Jared Kushner's brother is now part owner of the Los Angeles Lakers. And that just happened yesterday. And people are sitting around going, how the fuck did this happen? This guy just bought the Lakers in October. Normally, you hold on to an asset for a while. As an owner, you want that moment where you get to hold up the Larry O'Brien Cup, right? Like, that is the pinnacle. That is like the holy fucking grail. And this guy sells the franchise that he's owned for less than a year. See, this is what I'm talking about with this eclipse. Now, all of a sudden, people are looking at it. And they're like, what? The timing is really odd. And, the buyer, the brother of your son-in-law? See, this is starting to, you see what I'm saying here? These events are setting things in motion, right? They're setting things in motion. And I'll tell you right now that when Mars goes into Leo, it's going to go through Trump's 12th house. And it just went into Cancer, so we got a Mars cycle before that happens. By the way, that Mars is going to go through his 11th house and start to conjunct all his Cancerian planets. And he is not going to be in a good mood, right? This dude is going to be feisty, surly, cranky. Expect Trump not to be in a good mood. And then Mars dips into his 12th house. That transit, which happens every 2 years, is a transit that can initiate and ignite hidden enemies. Now, I'm not talking about, like an assassination attempt. Apparently, that's always around Trump. But it really feels like that is like he's in the gauntlet. Jupiter's in his 12th house, which on some level could be good for him. But the retrograde that happens in December will not be good for him because it gets really close to his ascendant, gets really close to his Mars, and then it retrogrades back into the 12th. And for me, that would be a loss of vitality, like an evacuation of vitality. Meanwhile, Mars is going through that 12th house and he's vulnerable, right? There's a vulnerability with Mars going through the 12th. So again, this is all based on Leo, right? And this Leo eclipse. And I feel like this is what's going to happen. We're going to see these people who have been, legends, icons. They're not going to fare well. They're not going to fare well during this time. Meanwhile, you're going to see like the cockroach uprising. This all kind of started last year in like Thailand, where you had a bunch of kids who were rioting, right? So you're going to see more of that. This is inevitable. It's part of the astrological balance of things, and some of it will also. It won't all be chaotic and anarchic. You're going to have a lot. The thing that's really blown my mind through the internet and doing this work for years is the amount of people who are sleuthing and digging and coming up with stuff. And it's just fucking amazing. Like I found this one guy who somehow got into Tupac Shakur's records when he was in prison in New York for about a year. And he found that he was working with this psychiatrist who specialized in like brain mapping and programming. I'm like, man, that's some deep digging. Like they put Pac on ice for a year, reprogrammed him, and sent him out to the other government operative, high-ranking Freemason, Suge Knight. Here you go. You're on death row now. Go do your thing. It's amazing, right? We have all these people that are just completely digging around and finding things out. It's mind-blowing. And you have to work through a lot of it. And sometimes it's a little weird. And like, really? I'm not going there. I'm just not going there. But this is all part of it. This is all part of this Aquarian experience we're in. And the one thing that Aquarius and Uranus are really good at are tearing things down. It's the nature of it, right? Uranus is destructive. The building up part is the tricky part, right? But if you follow the nodes, like where did we come out of? We came out of this true node in Pisces period. And everything was kind of hazy, right? It was very hazy. And there was a lot of like illusion. And I mean, for me, the thing that really typified that true node in Pisces was like Kamala Harris's drinking. That's like so true node in fucking Pisces. And then, Tim Waltz and his constant lying, right? I mean, there's other examples that we could look at. And now we go into Aquarius, and the energy is disruptive. And Aquarius is good for bringing things down, right? And it's like, well, then how do we rebuild it? Well, if you follow the nodes, the next nodal station will be in Capricorn, and that's where things get built, right? That's when the order comes back in. And there's no guarantee that the order that emerges on the other side of this is going to be an order that's going to be more positive for us, that we have systems that will be more fair, organic, analog, whatever word you want to use, right? Because the thing about astrology is that it's kind of agnostic, right? And there's a total possibility that the tearing down goes back to the conversation of you'll own nothing and be happy. And then what happens on the end of that is that now you've got the social engineers with the true node in Capricorn, and you got Agenda 2030, and they're building the world anew in their vision, right? That's a possibility. The other possibility that exists is that the structures get torn down to the point where ultimately people have to take on the authority and become the sort of the agents of Capricorn and build a new structure. And that's where we are, right? And this is basically almost about a 3.5 year period. I mean, you live in interesting times. Crystal Shaman's here. Stop playing along. If you don't like data centers, stop using cell phones, etc. It's always an option. It's always an option. There's ways you can mask your cell phone. But at some point, I would assume you're on a computer. And even if you're hardwired into your computer, you're probably somewhere where there's a Wi-Fi signal around. Maybe your neighbors have one. So you can stop playing along as much as you can. If you're driving a car and you're out in public, you're going to hit any number of cameras, and they're not flock cameras, right? So what do you do? Tint your windows, your license plate. You can do all those things. I'm just saying you can limit your footprint. I don't think you can completely eliminate your footprint. Let's see. Israel is behind it for sure. They have advanced tech. Hearing about Abraham Lincoln Carrier. You know, Neil, I brought this up and I got shit for it. I talked about this, maybe about a month after the war started, which was February 27th or whatever it was, or something along those lines. I forget. Sometime in February. And apparently somebody set fire to part of the Lincoln because they were pissed off and they'd been at sea for a year. And somebody said, oh, no, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. They wouldn't do that. Our soldiers are the best in the world. You know, and it's like, oh, really? Really? These guys have been out on the ocean for a very long time. And I've seen what they feed them. It's garbage. It's total garbage. So yeah, and that's just one ship. But I agree with you. Humans are unpredictable. Yeah, I agree. Let's see. The golden age does not include you. Batteries are not included in the golden age. Do you remember that? Batteries not included. Batteries not included. Then all of a sudden, batteries were fucking included. Every time I buy something, well, there's a battery. Of course, they're charging for the battery. 14th Amendment, citizens cannot be sovereign. All current countries, corporational and hence are not sovereign. Well, there are some people, my dear friend, who believe the Constitution is just a piece of paper. Because clearly there are other parts of the Constitution, like our friend in Minneapolis, who got tried for saying a word and was convicted. A clear violation of her First Amendment rights. So in that regard, the Constitution is really just something to wipe your ass with, apparently. And we could throw the 14th Amendment in there as well. Let's see. Who else? I have to agree. Most of us are tools and good at using them. Good. Earthquakes, new president, not sus at all. The golden age is for the cabal. It's gilded for the rest of us. I like that comment. I heard Battlefield Earth is close to what's going on. Actually, listen, I fucking love that movie. It is cheesy, but I love that movie. It is, I'll tell you what you'll take away from with Battlefield Earth. You will understand the minds of people in positions of power, because the thing that they're called cyclos, right? Every cyclo, which is from some distant planet here on Earth, every cyclo is searching for leverage. They're always searching for leverage. Because if they have leverage, they have power over another person, right? And I think that is the huge takeaway, because this is how the world of corruption operates. It's through leverage. If you've got compromising pictures of somebody, that is leverage. If you have a record of a transaction that somebody did, it might not have been above board. That's leverage. So you get introduced to the mindset of people whose sole goal and role in life is to accrue power. And leverage is the key. Let's see. I'm demoralized. Pluto transiting my 12th house. Those Pluto 12th house transits can be intense, man. I remember going through that. And I went through that in my early 20s. And it coincided with me, like, I took this tour and I went to these intentional spiritual communities, which were inspired by me watching this movie, My Dinner with Andre. And I said to myself, I got to go to Findhorn. And I eventually went to Findhorn. I spent a month there. And those 3 months of my life were mind blowing. I mean, really mind blowing. I mean, I got stories that I haven't even shared, but when I got back, right, I moved back in with my parents because I had no place to go. I just graduated from college. And I dealt with that Pluto in my 12th house. And it was difficult because I'd just been out in the world, like not just the world, but like parts of the world that got me in touch with like other worlds. And then here I am living with my parents. And it was in Montero, California, which is right on the coast and foggy as fuck. Right. And I was going through this depression, this heavy depression. My lifesaver was I started running, and it helped me with my endorphins, and it helped me get through that period. But it was a long period of time with Pluto in my 12th house. And I was always kind of dealing with a sense of, how do I explain this? Doom, sense of doom, maybe self-destruction. Definitely a very heavy vibe in my 12th house. And there were things that I would do that I couldn't really like explain why I did them in that moment. But it was a heavy time. And it didn't really abate until Pluto hit my ascendant. And let's just say I made up for lost time. Hang in there, Kev. Hang in there. I know you're a Libra, and Pluto's going to eventually catch up with your Libra sun, and there will be better days ahead. Greg Braden would call that unique human creativity our inner divinity. That divinity allows for us. I met Greg Braden once. Nice guy. Really nice guy. They say that he was my idol or anything, but published author and pretty well-known speaker, super nice guy. I'll tell you also I met that I really liked was James Redfield, the author of the Celestine Prophecies. Really nice guy, sweet guy. Liked him. Who else did I meet? The guy who wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. That guy, I forget his name now. I remember his ex-wife, Barbara DeAngelis, because I always thought she was really sexy. I met him. In fact, I was selling music at that time. And he came to my booth at a show and he bought a couple of my mixtapes. I thought that was funny. If DNA's thing, they have it mapped, no junk. You're just being told junk DNA, psyop. That's a possibility. But that's a possibility. So maybe there's a reason why they're not telling us. Right? Maybe there's a reason why they're not telling us. You know, does a tree make a sound in the forest if you're not there? You know, so whether or not they've mapped it out or not, and maybe there is the sort of the golden keys to our existence, it may as well be junk. Because at this point, we don't really know anything more or better. And until they do, well, I guess we can just change the name of it. Junk sounds pretty bad. We could call it dark DNA. How about that? Dark DNA. Let's see. What else we have? They don't want to repair our cars. No, they don't. Yeah. So this is a really good, we'll just buy old cars. So what'll happen is that the parts for old cars are going to be harder and harder to get. If you want a picture of what owning an old car looks like, go to some pictures of Cuba where they still drive 57 Chevys. How do they do it? They machine a lot of their parts. And they'll have one guy or two guys sort of in the general vicinity who will have like machine tools and lathes and can basically reproduce a part that is a reasonable facsimile. And that's how and why they're able to drive 57 Chevys and they're original. And they're not getting parts. They don't have a fucking Napa or, AutoZone. They're responsible for creating that stuff. Yeah, but to your point, they're also, when they bring in cars now, and I've seen some videos on this, when they bring in cars now, like say, let's say there's a wreck, right? And it is, for the insurance company's purposes, totaled. But the engine can still be good. Let's say the back end is just a freaking accordion all the way up to the back seat. But that engine is good, right? And so theoretically, you could part that engine out, you could pull that engine out, and that engine could be sold and reused. Well, apparently now, this is what I've heard, is that there are instructions that are being given to wrecking yards to destroy engines. Yeah, I can't confirm this completely. I've seen a couple of videos on it. But the other thing too now is that when you go to buy some of these parts, and again, the engine would be part of it, that they require very detailed information about you, the buyer. I mean, before you just go in there, you say, okay, how much for this engine? $500. Okay. Are you going to pull it? Well, pulling it's going to be an extra $50. Okay, cool. 550, right? 550. Here you go. There's 550. And then they write your receipt. You just sign the receipt. That's all you used to do. Apparently, that's going to change. So the older car thing will only be workable ultimately if you can have parts. Now, if I were me, which I am, and I had a car that, I could get another engine for, which I could, you could do that. And you probably want to do it sooner than later, right? So you just have another engine lying around in a crate. The problem is that you run into other issues like transmissions, and some of it's not just an engine that powers a car. And there's the whole gas thing, right? Which is another part of this. Oh, well, sorry. Gas is reserved for government vehicles only. The rest of you are driving electric. And what's interesting is that electric vehicles are not selling. With the exception of Teslas, which always sell, they're not selling. And, Ford discontinued its electric F-150 because it has like you charge it, you put something on the hitch, you pull it, and you're going to need to recharge it, 3 or 4 hours later because of all the torque. And electric vehicles, they suck in cold weather. They don't really fire up. And then if you use something like an air conditioner or heater, and clearly this time of year, people are using a lot of air, that sucks on the battery as well. So as a proposition, electric cars are a failure, an utter failure. And I can't believe just how like myopic the car manufacturers are. Like you can get a Dodge Hellcat with an electric engine. Who wants a fucking Hellcat with an electric engine? I mean, part of having a Hellcat is having a V8 with a Hemi and throw a fucking, turbo or supercharger on it and go out run the CHP. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you get that car, not because of an electric fucking engine. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so a lot of these electric cars, they're just sitting there. They're just sitting on lots, not moving. And they'll discount them a bit, but they're still not going to be, they're not going to be worth what you're going to pay for them. We're really at a very interesting crossroads. Let's see. Do we have anybody new here? Cars for Kids. Do you know who's behind Cars for Kids? Why don't you guess? Why don't you guess? Why don't you guess who's behind Cars for Kids? I just gave you a hint. Frank Henneke, what's up? Honda, great vehicle. Great vehicle. Let's see. JM. Hey, what's up, Jackie? I'm having Pluto conjunct my south node. Wow, that's intense. Our friend here, very good astrologer, and decided that she was going to stop avidly working in astrology. And I'm wondering, Jackie, if this Pluto transit will have you rethink that. Yes, Walmart is participating in surveillance pricing. Absolutely. And Walmart is also participating in lying to you about the weight and measures of the things that you buy inside a Walmart and pay for them. Played a video yesterday on 15 Minutes of Flame. There's a guy named Jimmy Rigg. This is what I love about the internet, right? Jimmy Rigg. And he's just a dude. And he goes into Walmart and he finds these hams. Puts the ham on the scale, says the ham is 5.5 pounds. And in actuality, the ham is actually 2 3/4 pounds. You're paying for over 2 pounds that don't exist. And it wasn't just one ham. It was ham after ham after ham after ham. And if they're doing it with hams, then they're probably doing it with other stuff as well. So it's not just surveillance pricing, but they are actually fucking with you in terms of weights, measures, and price. Always weigh your produce. If you can, weigh your meat. Make sure you are getting the exact price for the weight that you're buying. Don't assume. Now, what he did is he went to the manager and was like, woo, right over the manager's head, woo. And he had no way of rectifying it. And the manager said, well, we don't have a scale in the meat department. What does he do? He walks into the fucking meat department. And what do they have there? They got a fucking scale. They could rectify it. So it's not just surveillance pricing. but it's also now Walmart will say that this is the butcher, and they're the ones that have made this egregious error. Okay, but you're supposed to correct it because you're the one that's fucking selling it, and you better get in touch with your supplier because they're fucking us over, right? And so yeah, they're making money and you're making money, and even if it's not spoken, you're both in collusion, right? So that's another way that, and then there's the shrinkflation, which I fucking hate. It's like you pay the same price for like a power bar or some shit like that, and then you open it up, and the bar is like a quarter less of the size than it used to be. It's the same thing with like siete tortillas. I love siete tortillas. Almond flour. They're great. They used to be fairly good size, and now they're fucking shrinking. It's like I remember these were bigger. Anyway, let's see who else we have here. I heard about while people were out protesting, they were putting the finishing touches on the global prison. Yes, when you vote, you consent to the corrupt politicians. You're free to vote or not vote. In my opinion, votes are nothing burger, and all politicians are selected. I would say that there's about 90% truth in that. And even if there is the 10%, let me tell you how people are programmed to vote in certain ways. So what we're witnessing now is a wave of socialist candidates, right? Mamdani and the guy from, Minneapolis, and they're starting to make headway in these elections. Well, why are they making headway in these elections? Well, it's twofold. One is that almost to a person, they're pro-Palestinian. And there are people who are sick and tired of Israel. And during the Mamdani cycle of elections, every single AIPAC-backed candidate lost. Every single one. And it's because they didn't want to support AIPAC. They didn't want to support Israel. Now, is the Mamdani socialists the solution? No, they're not. But it's a way to socially engineer people and steer them in a direction where they think they're voting for something that's going to be a solution to the shit show that we're now experiencing. So it's another way to get people to move, right? It's very reactionary, very, very reactionary. And even the re-election of Trump. Look, the Republicans, I don't think Ron DeSantis is a bad governor, although I think he shows a little too much deference to a certain country in the Middle East. He certainly was not a scintillating candidate, couldn't debate for shit. He's more of a policy guy. But I guarantee you, if Ron DeSantis ran against Joe Biden, he would have won. I mean, that's how easy it was. That's how easy it was. And it was like a setup. They were setting it up for Trump to come back in because Biden was just a terribly weak candidate. And everything he did disgusted people. And they couldn't wait to give Trump another shot at taking down the deep state. And guess what? I understand it. I get it. I did not vote for Trump, by the way. But I get it. And now, the thing about Trump, which is mildly interesting, is that every now and then he'll do something positive. And it's like, oh, he just did something positive. And then he'll do something else. It's like, why the fuck did you do that? And I really feel like it's a very Gemini thing with him, but it also feels like some kind of esoteric principle. It feels very Freemasonic. It's sort of like acting like God. Because sometimes God doles out disaster, right? And then sometimes God doles out abundance and blessings. Anyway, he cut back the the schedule for vaccines. All right, let's get on with the star of the day. Oh, I should do the chart of the moment. I like these Thursday shows. Let's me stretch out a little bit. Okay, so let's do the chart of the moment. And we know what's going to happen here. Oh, look at that. Look at that. All right, so okay, so here we are. Moon in Virgo conjunct Regulus. You see, something happened in 2011 that was momentous. And I could be wrong here because I kind of live in an astrological cave of sorts. But I haven't heard a lot of astrologers talk about when Regulus went into Virgo in 2011. I mean, when you have a fixed star change signs, like it is such a rare occurrence, really, really rare. And not just any fixed star, but the king of all the fixed stars, Regulus, the star that regulates the entire sky, right? And so we go from this whole idea, right, with the fixed star Regulus in Leo, and it goes back to this whole like divine right, divine rule. I mean, literally the stars were dictating this. Leo, the king, the bloodline. For thousands of years, Regulus was sending the operating manual down to those who were paying attention. And that was the model that was created. And again, part of that model, the transposition of the king and the queen and the emperor and the empress to political figures like prime ministers and presidents. And it was a later version of it. And of course, we talked about stars, right? Stars very much related to this idea that they're up here, right? There's like this, they call them stars for a reason. They're up in heaven, right? And we're just lowly peons that look up to them in their lives. And that's all very Regulus as well. Well, in 2011, Regulus went into Virgo, and Virgo is not about stars. What is going on here with my glasses? Virgo is about the people, right? It's about the folk. And I would say that it's been a bumpy transition in a lot of ways. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that, starting around 2011, 2012, we're in the second phase Obama. We're heading second phase Obama, right? And this is when things really begin to shift, and not in a good way. Let's take Black Lives Matter for an example, which relates, you're going to see where I'm going with this. It relates to this shift with the true node and the Regulus going into Virgo. If you look at the structure of Black Lives Matter, it was all women. All women. And women of color. I think they had one guy, D. Ray McKesson, who happened to be gay. And so Black Lives Matter is literally a Virgo and Regulus moment and movement, right? It like comes from the streets. And the first sightings of Black Lives Matter take place in Seattle. Imagine that. And they were very into going into like cafes and restaurants and disrupting them and accusing the people in those restaurants, who are probably mostly white, of having privilege and being colonizers and making them feel absolutely guilty. Now, those people are not necessarily going to fall into the Leo mode as presidents, kings, queens, and emperors, but in a society that has a class system, not a caste system, but a class system, the upper middle class would be kind of leonine, right? They'd be kind of leonine that they had reached a level of achievement that if you were to go into, I don't know, maybe the dukes or duchesses, barons, baronesses of other times, might rival some of them. You know, like there are some incredibly nice houses in like Issaquah and on the Puget Sound, really nice places. A lot of those people probably made Microsoft money too, right? So while they're not completely kings and queens, they would represent kind of a social manifestation of that. And here you have Black Lives Matter coming in and haranguing them and harassing them. And that's where it starts, right? And it keeps building and building and building. And then, we have all these supposed shootings. And we know who they all are, right? Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown, Aubrey, what's his name in Georgia. Like it just adds up and culminates in George Floyd. And as a result of this, during this time, we begin to see the movement of the underclass, the people, Virgo, right? If you look at Virgo, if you were to take like a medieval setting, right? You would have the castle, and you had the king and the queen, and they would sit at the top, and they would be Leo. And then in the village, and all the people that did the things for other villagers, but also the people in the castle, they're Virgo. And that's why Virgo follows Leo, right? They have an interesting relationship with one another. So Virgo is all about service. Well, who does Virgo serve? Well, in feudal times, Virgo served the lords, the kings, the queens, the emperors, and the empresses. That was part of the service. When Regulus moved into Virgo, that changed. And I'll give you another example of sort of the cosmetic of the change. $20 minimum wage. Whoa. We're paying people in McDonald's, which is a very Virgoan occupation, serving you burgers. You're going to get $20 an hour. We are going to treat you now like workforce royalty. Regulus goes into Virgo. How's it working out? Not very well. You're having to pay a shit ton more money for your food at fast food restaurants. And if you think that it's only California, you're wrong, because you'll get a little breaks in other places, but chains tend to spread those costs across all of their franchises. So they're not getting killed by $20 an hour wages for jobs that were never meant to be a fucking career in the first place. But again, it's another iteration of, Regulus now in the sign of Virgo. So now you've got Black Lives Matter. Like the people are angry. They're starting to rally, and then you have Antifa, right? The birth of again, it's who are they revolting against? They're revolting against the power structures. They're revolting against the Praetorian Guard, who supposedly protect the kings and the queens, right? There's that one couple in Missouri, the famous trial where, they'd gotten into a gated community and they're protesting this gated community. I mean, the gated community is like the castle itself, right? I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. Like behind those walls are mini castles. And so you had this group of people protesting Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Love Fest, right? And the people inside that home come out with firearms. because they want to protect their castle, right? It's called, I believe, castle domain or something like that. And again, this is a picture of the time, right? We're in a shift. And when we go into a shift like that, it is not always easy. It's bumpy, and then we get DEI, and we have all these people who are not fucking qualified to do things. But because DEI has been put into place and a business will be rewarded with low interest loans, and by hiring certain people, they basically indemnify themselves against some form of social protest and being canceled. And DEI is a complete, like, Regulus in Virgo moment. Now we're elevating these people. We're elevating these people into positions of power that they're really not qualified for. They're not. Perfect example of this was this woman who she was an HR person at a fairly important company in New York, and she was a Knicks fan. And when the Knicks won the championship, she emptied out the trash on the ground because the trash can looked like a Knicks trash can, and she wanted to take it home. Well, she was fired. Right. So we have the moon today, right here, conjuncting Regulus, which is an interesting place for the moon to be post-eclipse. And in most cases, the moon in Virgo is going to be critical. We've discussed this on many occasions. But I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on the moon today. And I want you to think about, like, who you are and where you are in your life. And try not to take an overly critical approach. I would say today is a day where if you did an inventory, it could get to put your angst or your fatigue or your paranoia aside for a period of time. Just sit down and take an inventory of all the things that you can do. I mean, some of it is just basic. Like, if you can get up and walk without the aid of a walker or a cane, write that shit down. Right? Write that down. You don't know. You don't know how, and some of you do know. Lynn knows. Lynn's been there. Like, if you can't do that, all of a sudden your life becomes really difficult. And I go to HEB a couple times a week, and I see people having a rough fucking time, right? It's basic, it's fundamental. I walk. I can use my hands. I'm not blind. I may need other glasses. I mean, I'm saying start at a place that's right at ground level. And then think about other things. Well, I'm pretty good at baking. I'm pretty good at canning. I have kind of a latent talent with airbrushing. I think today, post-eclipse, is a good day to take an inventory, because with the moon conjunct Regulus in Virgo, it confers a power and an authority. And it's a way to reintegrate things about yourself. And you know what? And if you have a hard time or you're stuck, ask a friend. Get on the friend line option. Say, hey, can you tell me some things about me? And I'm not looking for compliments, but I'm doing an assessment. Can you tell me some things about me that you think that I'm good at? And maybe you could do the same for the other person. You can say, you know what? I didn't realize that, I had this skill. Well, thank you for reminding me. I mean, it could be really something fundamental, like dogs like you. Dogs don't like everybody, by the way. So that's my prescription for this moon. And it's because it's coming off the eclipse and it's sitting, nesting right on Regulus. And we have a nice sextile going on with Mars in Cancer, which means that whatever it is that you are looking at and trying to create a list with, some of those things can be actionable. And you can remind yourself, you know what? I am pretty good at this. I am pretty good. Let me dig into this. Let me go in this direction. By the way, I think this is a great day for domesticity in general. You want to clean your house? Today's the day. Today is the day to clean house. Today is the day to get organized. Mercury's coming up on Jupiter. That's going to be really interesting. Mercury's going to hit Jupiter tomorrow. It's going to be a good day for telling tall tales. It'll also be like the paramount of lies. So tomorrow's the Candace Owens, Andrew Wilson debate, isn't it? I'm a little concerned about Candace. And the reason why I'm concerned, you could say it's all an act, it's all there, that's fine, is because Candace is a Taurus, and all these Leo planets are squaring her Taurus planets. So she could be in for a bit of a struggle. However, that moon will be in Virgo, and that will be a boon to her Taurus planets. Tomorrow on the forecast, I'll do a chart for the show, and we'll kind of break it down. Andrew Wilson, I have no data on him whatsoever. He's very strange in terms of his digital footprint. He doesn't really exist prior to 2020. He's a cutout. I don't know who he's a cutout for, but he's definitely a cutout, right? Like if you were to create somebody who would theoretically be a paleo Christian conservative, which is how he has branded himself, and wanted to project a strong, manly image, which, by the way, the name Andrew does mean manly. You would have a guy who would have some facial hair and almost always dress in a plaid button-up shirt. Always. Whenever you see him, he's in that plaid button-up shirt. He's usually in earth tones, browns, grays, blacks. And I think that's to confer like heaviness, gravitas. And then he smokes. And it almost feels like if you were to create a character who would imbue certain qualities of being a trad, conservative, paleo, Christian grifter, that's what he'd look like. That's what he would look like. He wouldn't wear a t-shirt, like he wouldn't wear a Nevermind t-shirt by Nirvana. He wouldn't wear a turtleneck and a blazer. Like he has a uniform. So to me, he's a cutout. Now, I don't know exactly who he is a cutout for. He claims to be a third-degree Mason, and he kind of mumbles over it. But he has a tendency to change the stories. Like, yeah, I was a sniper in the Army. Well, how long were you in the Army for? Well, I don't know, maybe less than a year or something. I don't know, I forget. Like, really? You forget that? You're a sniper in the fucking Army. and you're kind of mumbling over the details because your wife, your loudmouth wife, said to the world that not only are you a marksman, but you are a sniper in the army. So now he has to defend that, and he really doesn't defend it well. So even when he has a story, the story comes out weird at times. So he's a cutout. I have a theory, and I can't corroborate this theory. And it sounds like a crazy, wacky theory. But I have a theory that Andrew Wilson, and I could be completely wrong in this, I have a theory that he's Russian. Because for years, we read about Russians, even post fall of the Soviet Union, who were here in this country. And they learned English, blended in perfectly. And when I think of Andrew Wilson, the movie No Way Out with Kevin Costner and Gene Hackman comes to mind. And if you were Russian and you wanted to be disruptive, right, you would have somebody like Andrew Wilson who is disruptive. Now, he may just be Andrew Wilson. He may have a completely different name. He may work for the CIA. The guy's a cutout, an absolute cutout. So it'll be interesting. Anyway, I'll do the chart tomorrow. We're still in that Venus-Mars square, but luckily Venus is starting to outpace Mars a little bit. We're starting to finally have a breakaway moment with Venus. So by the time we get into like Tuesday of next week, that square is going to be over and done with. And it will be more in sextile mode with Mercury and the Sun, which will be a much better aspect for Venus, right? The turbulence and the underlying tension of relating to other people will have evaporated. But these things are there for a reason, right? They're there for a reason. We also have an inconjunct with the moon, which is right here, and Mars here with Pluto. And this is really for like the morning hours and today. This is a really interesting inconjunct. I mean, how I would interpret it would be an external event that rocks people's emotions and in some ways destabilizes their ability to act. I don't know what it means, but if I were going to interpret it that way, that's how I would interpret it. Because Pluto is a collective energy, right? It happens to all of us. So let's keep an eye on how things unfold today. All right. I got a quick little sponsor shout out with Ray. Mark Walter. Thank you, Steve. Mark Walter, the soon-to-be ex-owner of the LA Lakers, soon to be owned by Josh Kushner and Bob Iger. Imagine that. So let's talk a little Silver Botanicals. You have 9 days to take advantage of their 20% off sale. Everything on their website is 20% off. Oral care, skin care, household items, travel sizes, trial sizes. All of them. You can get deodorant refilling instructions, right? Because they have a really good deodorant there. It's one of those ball-ons. They got a personal care series where they actually line things up and send you bundles of personal care goodies. The link for this is in the show notes. And all you got to do when you check out is type in Leo, L-E-O, get the 20% discount, free shipping. And you're helping out a business in San Marcos run by our good friends Dean and Ray. Do a fine job there. All right, let's get into our star of the day, and then let's get out of here. Let's see. Yes. And we do have to put a little love in there for True Hemp Science. And our star of the day is John Slattery, or Roger Slattery. Actually, it's John Slattery. It's John Slattery. He's Roger. He's Roger Sterling from Mad Men. This is how I identify John Slattery, as Roger. It's John Slattery. Anyway, this is brought to you by True Hemp Science, your one-stop shop for all things CBD. You know, these assholes in Texas said, we're going to wreck the THC CBD community and economy. Doesn't affect Chris. His products are in alignment already with the guidelines. You're not getting any junk THC. You're getting medicinal stuff. Gummies for sleep, gummies during the daytime. I would caution you to perhaps not drive during the daytime gummy experience, and a whole host of tinctures that are there to reset your system. All you got to do is buy $100 more, type in 15MINS. You'll get a goodie bag on top of your order, and $150 more gets you free shipping. All right, let's talk John Slattery, Roger Sterling. I cannot separate the actor from the man from the chart. And I know I'm supposed to do that, but this guy's energy was on display. Now, I've seen him in other movies and shows. And every time I see him, I thought, that's fucking Roger Sterling. And he has a touch of Roger Sterling in him. He was the perfect person to play Roger Sterling. Let me tell you why. First of all, he is an Aquarius rising. And if you're familiar with Mad Men, Roger is kind of rebellious. Like, he's the only character on Mad Men who takes acid. And not just once. Roger becomes a bit of a psychonaut. Not only that, but he is very okay with chaos. The character Roger Sterling is very okay with chaos. Like, he'll leave his wife at a moment's notice for his secretary. I'll get to his wife, by the way. I'll get to his real life wife in his seventh house. And he's willing to live with that chaos. This man is driven for self-satisfaction. And he only has one account, right? And what is that? Lucky Strike. And what's interesting about his character is the role that the father plays. And Roger is set up, right? He's set up to play the role of the partner because his father started the firm with Bert Cooper, but his father's not around, right? So in John Slattery's chart, he has Saturn in the 12th house, which again is the father, but the father's missing, right? This is the nature of Saturn in the 12th house. And it could be, and again, I don't know anything about his background other than he's from Boston, was a good baseball player, and I know who he's married to. But it could be the fact that his father worked all the time and just was not around and not available. And he has a Saturn-Moon conjunction, albeit in different signs. So the mother would also play a missing role in his life. And this would be a gap that John Slattery would try to fill throughout his life, right? The missing gap between the moon, and Saturn. And people that have Saturn in the 12th house, no matter how well adjusted they are socially, almost always have an underlying sense of alienation. Because the lesson of Saturn in the 12th is that Saturn demands that you spend time apart from the world. Saturn demands that you spend time with your soul, which is part and parcel of the 12th house. From a character standpoint, his father's not around, but he has a tremendous influence because he sets him up. Now, we know that in the show, he likes chaos. Anytime somebody wants to take over the firm or buy the firm, Roger has a plan. And one of the plans is joining with this company and getting stock and money so he can pay off his ex-wife and sleep with and marry his secretary. And so he's very self-serving. He's a Leo. But he also has Jupiter in the first house, right? He has Jupiter in Pisces. And there's kind of an easy come, easy go vibe with Jupiter in Pisces. Now, he has Chiron there. And I think John Slattery, the man, not Roger Sterling, the actor, with Chiron conjunct Jupiter, would have more of a sense of self-awareness around opportunity in his life, right? Like if he just had Jupiter there, Jupiter would just be utterly self-indulgent. But with Chiron there, it limits the self-indulgence. There's a limitation to the self-indulgence because what will happen is that he'll overdo something and then Chiron kicks in and he gets the receipts of overdoing it. But at the same time, I think he actually is able to portray Jupiter in the show. He loves to drink. He's always fucking drinking. Yeah, he drinks like a fish. Hello, Jupiter in the first house. Let's talk about his marriage. John Slattery is one of the few people that I know of, although they do exist. I can think of at least two off the top of my head. You have, who is it? Meredith Baxter and David Burney. And they had a show together called Bridget Loves Bernie, or Bernie Loves Bridget, or some shit like that. And they were actually husband and wife in real life. And they had a show where they were husband and wife. And he was a Jew and she was a Shiksa. And the parents were always involved. So I know at least one other show where a husband and wife were in. Lucy and Desi is another example. So I would say it's not common, but it's also been done. Well, John Slattery and Mona, who plays his wife on Mad Men, are married in real life. And so this is what we have here. We have the sun right there in Leo, bang, 7th house partnership, and then Uranus at 0 Virgo. So he's a sun-Uranus conjunction. And that means that his partnerships and his marriage would have an unusual sort of wrinkle, right? And he does. And in the show, he even divorces his wife in the show. And he divorces his secretary in the show, right? And again, I'm just relating this to his character. That is such a Sun-Uranus conjunction. And then who does he wind up with? And I say this to people who have Uranus in the seventh house, because Uranus in the seventh house can be tricky. Relationships start, they're gangbusters, usually under very unusual, strange, synchronistic circumstances. And then they stop. Like, what the fuck happened? As quickly as they start, they will stop. There is a radical inconstancy with Uranus in the seventh house. However, if you wind up partnering, marrying, bonding with somebody who is fundamentally different than you, Uranus becomes something very different. Case in point, well, I talked about Meredith Baxter and David Burney. She married a Jewish guy. That would be Uranus in the seventh house, marrying somebody outside of your faith. Does Catholic and Southern Baptist count? Oh, I think it would count. Would marrying somebody from another culture count? Absolutely. Let's say you marry somebody who's from Mexico, or they're Mexican, and you happen to be white. That's Uranian. So we bring the racial component or the ethnic component into it. What about a class system? What if you're just an ordinary working person? You manage to hook up with somebody who's stinking fucking rich and they're really into you. You know, like how Matt Damon married his housekeeper. Isn't that how? Or his babysitter or whatever? Isn't that what he did? That qualifies. What if you marry somebody who's much older? Yeah, it qualifies. What if you marry somebody who's younger? Yeah, that qualifies. What if you marry somebody with a disability? Qualifies. Anything that's different than theoretically who you are based on what you are. That's when Uranus has a home. It has a home. Congratulations. You know, you colored outside the lines. And in Mad Men, who does Roger ultimately wind up with and marry? He marries a woman from another culture. He marries Juliette Binoche, who is the mother of Megan, which is very strange because Don Draper was married to Megan. And had Don stayed married to Megan, Roger would have become Don's father-in-law. That is Uranus in the seventh house acted out in the show. And yes, his wife was an actress on the show as well, which is different. By the way, his wife had originally been married to George Clooney. And of course, George Clooney was a philanderer and she left him. And looking back on it, George regrets how he treated her. So I think this is really, really interesting. And John Slattery was meant to be an actor. He's got the true node in Leo, sun in Leo. And when you look again at his character on Mad Men, he is not inert. He is almost always at his best when he is either playing off another character or he is in a group setting, right? Unlike Don Draper, who can play a character as being inert, right? Or Peggy's kind of inert at times. Joan is kind of inert. Like Joan is her own fucking person. relationships are kind of a byproduct of, and Joan's another woman that Roger sleeps with, right? Unobtainable. And not only that, but she has his kid. Which, again, if we're playing with astrology and the character of Roger Sterling, hello, Saturn in the 12th house, the father that's not there, right? The kid's going to grow up. He's going to get rich. Roger left him a lot of money, but he's not the father. Isn't that interesting? I love shit like this. And then he's got Neptune up here, right? Neptune in Scorpio, ninth house. That, Neptune Pisces in Leo, Neptune/Pisces and Leo. To me, those are the two signs that are most attributable to being an actor. The great actors are Pisces and Leos. Pisces because they lie the best. And acting is lying. Leos because they love acting. He was a minor league baseball player for a while. And we can kind of see this with Mars in the 5th house, very active and would show some athletic ability with the sextiles to Mercury, Uranus, the sun. It takes you have to be really good to play pro ball. But if you're playing minor league ball, you're good. You got some skills. Anyway, he's my favorite character on Mad Men. He's the devil. Roger is the devil on Mad Men. It is not Don Draper. Even his name, right? Roger. Roger basically means to fuck somebody, right? That's what it means. And Sterling is the silver is the devil's currency, right? It's what they tempted Judas with. So Roger is the devil, even though Don Draper is in hell. Roger's not in hell. He's not. He has some humiliating fucking moments on the show for sure. Like when he loses the Lucky Strike account. And there are people who will remind him that he's really just sitting there, operating on fumes, making decisions. He doesn't have any accounts. And he's there because his father started the company. And he's pretty okay with it, right? He's got Venus in Libra. And I think that comes through as well. The guy's got some style, but again, it's Venus in the 8th house. Venus in the 8th house, I think, would make an individual more susceptible to affairs. But I don't think he does that, though. He's got that Venus-Saturn trine. So I think once he's in, he's in. So even though his character may have been a philanderer, I don't think he's a philanderer in real life. And in fact, he's probably behind the scenes a real romantic with his wife, his actress wife. All right, that's it. Long show today, huh? 2 hours and 32 minutes. This is almost like a Sunday night show. Kind of like doing this on Thursday. All right, I hope you stayed here long enough to enjoy it. If you did, hit like, hit subscribe. You can buy me a cup of coffee. I have a very busy day ahead of me. I will do my best to get back to those of you who have requested readings. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Treat each other well. God bless. Love you all. Bye for now.